Louise Bedford here, your host of the Talking Trading Show. I am so excited that we have got a summer series set up for you so that you can have stimulation throughout the summer, expand your mind, and stay in touch with our trading community. And as a major part of our summer series, I'm bringing you a very special guest. We'll be back to broadcasting every week as soon as this summer series is over, but for today, my guest and I are going to be discussing, are you smart enough to trade? Now, I know that so many people in the markets are above average intelligence, which is fantastic to see, but sometimes that can actually lead them down a path that they don't want to go. They need to be very system oriented to make money, and sometimes they don't bring the skill sets required that actually can turn that money brain over and that they can actually make that money in the markets. Trading coach Brian McAboy has seen this time and time again. Brian is from insideouttrading.com. He's a trader, a trading coach. He's a business consultant. He has a mechanical engineering and quality engineering background. He was last on the show in March 2019. So I'm so excited to invite you back, Brian. How are you going?
Oh, life is good. Life is good. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here and good to see you again as well. So, yeah,
Absolutely. Where are
life is good.
you today to give our listeners a bit of a, I know it's not summer where you are.
Oh, yeah. Well, not right now.
Exactly. Now, Brian, you've mentioned that most traders think that a lack of discipline or maybe some sort of psychological issue is the problem when their trading isn't quite up to par. But you say that this is incorrect. They lack training, and no one has ever taught them how to develop a process like trading on a day-to-day basis where they get consistent output. Can you tell me more about this training issue that you discuss?
Well, yeah, actually, I mean, it came to me early on after I first started working with traders. I would have people coming to me looking for help with the trading psychology. And after working with a handful of them, especially this one guy who, as far as he was concerned, I mean, he was a mess. And it's like, what? And I asked him at the beginning of the coaching, it's like, what do you want to accomplish out of this coaching? And I expected the answer to be, I want to make some money. And his answer was, I want to have my confidence back. He said, my confidence is gone right now. He said, I'm just feeling so despairing and it feels so futile. It's like, it's just, yeah, it's almost like I'm wasting I have no confidence right now. So that's the main thing we wanted back. So anyway, we got to working and we're working through the different psychological areas, with like behavioral psychology, Freudian psychology, the different stuff. And we're exploring just the different areas where he might possibly have something that's tripping him up with his trading. And we exhausted everything I could think of. And it's like, dude, you don't have psychological issues. And it was like the light bulb went on and it's like, yeah, what you've got is lack of training issues. You're trying to do a job that you don't know how to do and nobody's prepared you for it. And he's like, wow. And what was wild was outside of trading, the guy was massively successful. He made like $400,000 a year, very successful, had an excellent life, had done a lot of great things, athletics and professional and traveling. I mean, he had a great story, but trading was like the bane of his existence. And it was just killing him because he says, it's so simple. Why is it beating me so bad? Everything else in life I've succeeded in. And so anyway, yeah, we started exploring that, but it only makes sense. And I mean, kind of pigtailing on that. Have you ever heard of the book, The Peter Principle?
I have, yes.
It was a really excellent book. It was written a long time ago. So I think it was published in like 1969 or somewhere around there, 1970. And when I made this discovery, that book came to mind because Lawrence Peter was a guy commissioned to see why American businesses could profit when there was so much incompetence and bad decisions and just all kinds of stuff going wrong. And so what he found was, because he surveyed like hundreds of businesses to see what's going on in these businesses and all kinds of different industries. And it was pretty cool because what he found was that people would get moved up based on doing a good job where they were. And so say, yeah, this is Bob, he's doing a good job. So again, we'll promote him, and he's still kicking butt and taking names, go promote him. And he keeps getting promoted until he hits that level where he's not doing so well anymore. And he kind of gets stuck there. And that's where the Peter principle came from. It's like, and the principle is in any organization, a person will rise to the level of incompetence and then remain there. And the lesson behind it though was that if you throw somebody into a job, and this is the way I explain it to most traders, is it's a lack of training, because if you take a person of reasonable competence and intelligence and you throw them into a challenging job for which they have no experience or training or relatable skills, it's going to be rough.
Yeah,
They're
I
going to
think
have
it's
a hard
also
time, and they'll struggle, and it's going to be emotional and stressful. And it's just, there's almost no way that it's not going to be emotional.
It's also the Dunning Kruger principle. It's a very similar type of concept where
Yeah.
if you are rising up the ranks and then you hit that, it's almost like the fulcrum on a seesaw where things tip over and all of a sudden you are not competent for that role anymore. I've found
Yeah.
that to be with my traders as well, that especially when they are good in an outside area, like this gentleman was that you were training, they actually have that halo effect where they bring that over and they think, of course, I should be good at trading as well, which is interesting to see. And you've
Oh,
had
yeah.
your own struggles too. Like when you started trading, I know you ran into an amazing winning streak. I mean, good for you. And then down we go. And you traded your account down to $1,700 and it had an impact on you emotionally, physically, on your marriage. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think that's a very common situation. I sometimes wonder whether it's a great idea for traders to come out of a course in the middle of a bull run. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think it's one of the worst things that can happen to somebody. Um, in my experience, and if you just think about it in general, traders as a population are above average intelligence wise, and because otherwise they wouldn't be in a position to trade. If you look at what average is, sadly, average is not that great. So yeah, traders as a whole are doing better than that, and they're used to being able to look at things and figure them out, and jump into stuff and learn it quickly and succeed. But with trading, it's so easy to look at it, especially if you're smarter than average, or if you happen to have any technical background. You look at it. Oh, sure, yeah, I get it. I can do that. And you jump in and you find out, no, not so easy. And it's kicking you in the butt, but you don't know why, because again, it looks so easy. Yeah, I've got a system. I should just be able to do this, do that, make money, and do it over and over again. It's like, no.
It's like, how hard can it be? Come on.
Yeah. Well, and that's where being a little smarter than average is kind of a trap, though, because it looks so simple, and there's nobody standing there cautioning you severely, like your one of your parents. It's easy to jump into it with a false confidence. And yeah, the worst thing that can happen is, all of a sudden, you get into it, and you hit a winning streak. It's like, oh, for sure I can do this because I did it. Right. And see, that's one of the traps of deviating from your system and hitting a winner, though. That's a huge trap, because it's like, you have your rules, and then you see something over here that's way outside it, or, you go chase a trade, just has nothing to do with your system, and you win. Oh, mentally, that's terrible, because it's like, oh, that works.
You've
No,
reinforced a
not.
behavior that is just not appropriate, and you're likely to repeat that behavior because you've had
Oh
a
my God.
reward.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that can be one of the situations with traders as well, that often the times that we're working with people, because you're a trading coach as well, and you've seen so many situations where if you can reduce the errors that people are making, reduce the inconsistencies that people are making, that can make a huge difference to their overall trading results. One of the things that Chris Tage, my business partner, and I always look at is we look at to see, when we're looking at people's data, where are the areas where they're not performing? Where are the things that just aren't gelling with them? It might be a market, it might be a time frame, it might even just be that they're out of sync with the market. What do you do with your traders to reduce the inconsistent trading and the inconsistent behaviors that they are making?
Well, there's two sides to that. The first one is, and again, where a lot of traders, and it's lack of training, they'll have a system or what they think is a system, but it's not really a system. It's kind of an idea for a system. But as far as, I mean, and one thing that I start with everybody on, whether it's trading or elsewhere that have had people working for me, it's like, get clear on the words. A lot of people get into trading and the words screw them up too badly. I mean, like, trend, support, resistance, all these subjective terms that can mean different things to different people or change over time with the same person. Anyway, system is, by definition, it's a repeatable process with a known outcome. And again, that's why a lot of traders, first of all, you've heard the trading wisdom, write down what you do, document your system. A lot of traders have not done that. And if they have, most of them who have don't follow it. It's in a drawer somewhere. And so they're trading off of memory, which is dreadful for consistency over time. Because you figure, all right, if you're trading 50 weeks a year, one trade a day, 5 days a week, that's 250 trades a year. And if you're trading off of memory, it is so easy for little adjustments to be made over the course of time. If what you're doing today, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, if you're trading off of memory, it is very likely that you will have made a whole bunch of changes. And now, you're wondering why you're not making any money. Because you totally jacked up the system and you didn't even realize you were doing it.
It's like that game when we were kids where you whisper a statement into somebody's ear and you go around the table.
I remember that.
Yeah, how good is that? And by the end, it doesn't resemble anything to do with the original statement. I often see traders make that same error.
Oh, yeah. Well, and just in general, I mean, like I said, my background is quality assurance. And what we learned, well, let me back up a little bit. I moved from Denver down to South Carolina to open up a new plant. And the plant manager there was a really, really sharp guy. I was very fortunate to work for this guy because he was like super smart on the business side and on the people side. And it was just cool to work for him. But anyway, he was bound and determined that we were going to have like the best plant in the whole company. And so he was real quality minded. And he said, one of the things we're going to do is we are going to document everything around here, so that people are doing things consistently. We've got almost 200 people in this plant. We've got 183 people, and we can't just have everybody running around doing things just however they feel like they do it. It's like, no, we're going to establish best practices and we're going to document those, and that's how things are going to be done. And it was funny because, okay, so all of a sudden we got all the tech guys and the gurus in each of the departments writing all these work instructions and procedures. And, we're thinking they're being followed, and sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. Anyway, we had a quality auditor come in, or one of our customers, Pepsi. They wanted us to have a third-party auditor come in every year to make sure that we're following our procedures. And the first audit we got killed on because, no, she's checking the manuals and everything and talking to people, and it's like, no, you're not following your procedures. And so we looked at how they were being written, and it's like, well, just because you're smart and you know how to do something doesn't mean you know how to write a good procedure for somebody else to follow. And so I had to come up with a way to fix that. And what we wound up doing, and this is a good tip for traders, with your trading system, that's your procedure for placing trades. And it needs to be a good procedure if you're going to execute it consistently 100 times or several hundred times over time. Anyway, so what we would do is whenever somebody wrote up a procedure or work instruction, you had to test it before it would go into the official book, which means you would grab somebody who worked there but didn't do that job normally, and you say, all right, come here, here's the procedure, do the job, let me observe you doing it, make sure that it works. And if they had any questions or the job didn't get done right or whatever, then you had to go back and edit it again, until it got to the point where you could hand it to somebody and they could go and do the job right without asking any questions. Then it goes in the book. But once we started doing that, man, all of a sudden we were seeing such an improvement in performance, reduction in downtime and mistakes and quality errors and all kinds of stuff. And when the auditor came back through the next year, I mean, our score went up by like 40 points. We crushed it.
Oh my gosh.
With traders, it works the same way.
It would be, because we are in a high performance endeavor. What you're discussing is a multi-stage, multi-step, many people's minds already focused on the one high performance task, trading is so similar.
Oh yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
But well, and here's another good parallel for people to keep in mind with your trading. And speaking of inconsistencies, one of the biggest lessons that I learned when I got into quality, I mean, it makes sense when you think about it, but a lot of people don't think about it. What the Japanese learned. This is like where the lesson really got driven home. You remember back in the 70s and 80s, the Japanese cars, they were like cool and cute and got good miles. They're fun to drive, but they were kind of cheap cars. And Japan they were struggling. They were still recovering from World War II, and so they hired Deming to come over and help them get their house in order, because it's like, we got a lousy reputation, we're struggling to make money, and we know we can do better. How do we do that? And he said, well, if you invest in quality, which means you invest in good materials and good processes and good systems, and you train your people, and you establish quality standards and quality practices and all these things, it will make you a lot of money, even though it requires an investment up front. Because if you're just producing and you're just running and making stuff as fast as you can and as cheap as you can, you have a lot of scrap, you have a lot of downtime. And what's so easy to not see is that is a huge expense, and that's what's killing your profits. Same thing goes for trading. Every time you make a stupid move or a bad decision, or you chase a trade, or you deviate from your rules, that's a cost that comes right off the bottom line, and it adds up so fast that most traders don't realize that if you could just stop the screw ups, you don't even have to fix the winning trades, but if you just stop where you're handing it back, all of a sudden you go from break even to making pretty decent money.
But is it an intelligence issue though? Because a lot of the things that you and I discuss, it's to do with systems, it's following processes, it's following checklists. Do you have to be a certain level of intelligence to be able to get that to turn over and for it to make a buck?
Oh no, not at all. No.
Yeah.
Um, the reason it's so challenging for most traders, most people who get into trading, yeah, we're generally smarter than average. But the problem is, when you get into it, you don't know what you don't know. And so you can be smart, but there's so much about trading that isn't self-evident. It's not like you can look at it and see what's wrong. And just like in business and in quality in general, because quality is used in all kinds of businesses around the world, how to be consistent and how to facilitate consistency and eliminate inconsistency, that's not something that's readily evident on the surface either. And that's why you might be smart, you might be a smart person, and you're looking at a situation and it's like, I don't know how to be more consistent. It's because it's like nobody's taught you that before. And it's not something that you can just look at it and figure it out. Like how to write a good procedure, or with the psychological stuff, how to know that it's not you and you have some, screwed up head, or, a discipline issue, to know that it's a lack of training. You don't know, because it's like the forest for the trees thing. And that's where, the three things that I found most people need to be a successful traders, especially if you want to do it in a reasonable period of time, not the hard road of 5 years of hard knocks. You got to have a decent system, a repeatable method, so that you can be methodical and get predictable output. You got to have skills and confidence. If you have the skills and you have the confidence and you have a decent system, you're probably going to be all right. Now, in order to get those, though, you need some outside perspective. You need some outside help. Because
What I find interesting as well is that if everyone listening to this show, think of the similarities between what Brian is saying and what Chris and I say, because often we are saying a very similar thing. It occurred to me, Brian, that it could be that there's only like 15 things in the markets that work. And if you keep on applying them again and again and again, no matter where you are in the world, no matter who you are, that you will actually make money out of the markets. But you actually have to be humble enough to keep on applying that system again and again. Yeah. And you also, with a lot of the things that you're saying about people who come in from a successful arena and then they become traders, you're also saying that they have to suffer a change of identity sometimes, and that shift can be a difficult switched. Can you give everybody who has come from a successful arena some advice about how to make that shift into being a trader in their mindset, whether they're part-time or full-time?
Well, you touched on one of the key things, and that's your identity and just being self-aware. Um, we, Back when I first started in manufacturing, I was working at this one plant. We had this one mechanic, super sharp guy. I mean, when it came to hydraulics or mechanics on one of the machines, production machines, I mean, the guy was a whiz, and everybody just admired the heck out of him. Well, we had lost a few people in the electrical crew, and so we said, "Hey, can you come help out?" And he comes over, and he stated right up front, he's like, "Look, I know I'm sharp over here." He said, "But I don't know squat about electronics. So I assume I'm like that guy who just started last week, even though I've been here for years and I've been working on these machines. I don't know squat about the electrical. So treat me like I don't know squat because I don't." And he was smart enough to recognize, yeah, this is a whole different role. It has a whole different skill set that goes with it and a body of knowledge. And he was smart enough to recognize, hey, over there, I'm a rookie. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, so I'm not going to act like I do. Over here, yeah, I know my stuff, and I'm damn good. But over there, no.
Yeah, I
And so
love
it's the
that.
same thing
That
with trading.
attitude is so rare because so many times people try to keep their ego in line, and they're just thinking that other people are watching them and judging them. Whereas in this arena, you're not being watched and judged by anybody but yourself and probably a mentor if you've been smart and got one on board. I think that can be quite confronting for people.
Sure. Well, again, it's a lot of it is just self-awareness. Um, because if you're not self-aware, yeah, your ego is going to be driving you. But if you're self-aware, you can say, yeah, I've got experience over here. I've got experience over here. I've got teaching over here. But oh, that area, no, yeah, I don't know squat. I mean, one thing that I've tried to teach with my kids since they were little is to not be afraid to say, I don't know, even if you're a
Yeah.
pretty intelligent person, or to ask people stuff, when it's like, okay, yeah, I don't know what that means. What the heck, what are you talking about? And to not, again, to be okay with it. It's okay to be ignorant of things.
Yeah, yeah. One
Um,
of the things Chris Tate and I talk about as well is when you've got somebody saying, I know, it's almost like they shut down and they can't hear any more input. Whereas if somebody is in front of us saying, tell me more, then
mhm.
they're open and they can hear more. I think that's a wonderful thing when you get that in a student.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
There's a
Now,
quote that I heard recently, which I
mhm.
think is wonderful by Marilyn Ferguson. Each of us guards a gate of change that can only be unlocked from the inside. And I think that quote is summarizing exactly what you and I are talking about, where you have to be so careful with your emotions. And really, as traders, we are dealing with so much uncertainty. There are so many variables that are outside of our control. We can only control the things that we can control. I'd love to hear your advice to traders dealing with uncertainty. And what would you say to help them through that?
Well, again, it's just kind of raised awareness. Because with trading, with life in general, there are risks and uncertainties and all kinds of stuff. And it's really a matter of saying, yes, they exist. So what can I do to make those or to manage that risk? Um, and now, as far as uncertainty in particular, actually, uncertainty itself is a good thing if you learn about it. And I got to share this. I didn't come up with this. This actually I got from a book that I've got from Deepak Chopra, but I thought it was really cool at the time. He was actually talking about embracing uncertainty because that's where possibilities lie. If you are always clinging to certainty and knowing and that security that goes with it, and you're afraid of uncertainty, then you're limiting yourself to the past. But uncertainty is where now possibilities open up. And if you learn to embrace it, that's where good things happen.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, I've got a situation that I want you to help me with, which is one of the reasons for the call. So, one of the things I love being the host of Talking Trading is that I have very, very clever people on to advise me. And I let my people eavesdrop on that. Now, what I've noticed is that as time goes on, and often the smarter somebody is, people's trading plans get longer and longer. I was handed a trading plan just not so long ago. It was 67 pages long. 67 pages. That is just huge. And it is one of those aspects where, when it's so detailed, people just cannot follow it in the heat of the moment. Because as soon as you're trading, your IQ leaks out of your left ear, and all of a sudden, you are much less intelligent than when you started. Now, I
Mhm.
would like to hear your thoughts about complexity versus simplicity. I'm very curious about whether you've seen that in your traders and what you can do to overcome some of the foibles associated with that.
Oh, absolutely. Um, well, you stated it very well there. Complexity. Let me take that by itself. Complexity. One of the foundational things in quality and achieving consistent and reliable output from a process, whether it's a machine process or somebody doing something, the more complex it is, the more opportunities for error that you have, and the more opportunities for variability and inconsistency, which create problems and unknowns. Um, and so if you look at it as, okay, I want to make this as certain and as repeatable as possible, the main thing that you need to do is keep it simple. One concept that I teach people, and it's like, again, a foundational thing that I find has been very helpful for a lot of traders in approaching trading in general, is understand what trading is and what a trading system is. Because like, so if somebody asks you what is a trading system, how do you answer that?
I would say it's entry, exit, and position sizing, and that is one part of your entire trading plan. Your trading plan's like the business document that guides things like, do you have a will, and what will you do with trading when you go on holidays?
Okay. Um, well, okay. And so if somebody says, what is trading? If they ask you that, how do you answer that?
I
What
say
is
it's
trading?
for me personally, it's making money out of other people's psychological foibles that they're backing with their own money on a chart.
Okay. And so, yeah, in essence, it's buying and selling securities.
Yeah.
Um, well, or at least that's one perspective. Now, here's from a functional standpoint. Here's the other thing that I like to present to traders for a way to look at trading. Trading is really nothing more the act of trading. It's a decision making process. We take in information, we evaluate it against certain criteria, and then we make a decision and act on which decision seems appropriate. So it's simply a decision making process. And that understanding that by itself, when you lead toward consistency, again, complexity, if it's a decision making process, we want to keep it as simple as possible to make good decisions. The more complex it is, it's going to be difficult to make good decisions on a consistent basis. So simplification really counts. The other thing about like a trading system, instead of saying, like, usually when I ask traders, it'll be like, well, my system, it's my rules, my indicators, my charts, and it's like those are tools that you use, but your system, it's what you do. So when I tell people, it's like the first thing you want to do as far as documenting your system, just write down what you do when you're going to place a trade. What are the steps that you follow? And just in doing that, it helps clarify things. And the simpler you can keep it, the better. It's going to keep you from making mistakes. It's going to keep make it easy to do things consistently in the heat of the moment. And when things aren't going well, troubleshooting where it's not going well.
Yeah, yeah. One of the aspects that I think is interesting too is that often with high performance endeavors, and even if you look at brainstorming sessions, people actually add rather than take away. There's a book called Subtract by Lydie Klotz. And
Huh.
I'm hoping to get Lydie on the show, actually. And what it's talking about is that complex systems actually lead us down false avenues and we make poor decisions because we haven't put those blinkers on. And I think with trading systems, to put those blinkers on is very, very important. One of the things that they looked at in the medical profession is putting in a central line and how many steps it takes. So in the end, if they can simplify that, it just makes it a much cleaner process. And then you minimize infections and the outcome is actually better by following a checklist. Do you advise your traders to follow a checklist? So they've documented what they do, and then how do they drive improvements into that process without complicating the hell out of it?
Well, you drive improvements first of all because one of the first things you do after you've documented it is you want to go test it and run your metrics on it so that you know how good is it. And it's funny because that's another thing a lot of people skip is they don't run their metrics. They might kind of look at a few of them here and there, but they're not doing it on a consistent basis and just looking at, yeah, what's my winning percentage? What's my profit to loss? What's my average return per trade? And am I seeing changes? Are they satisfactory where they are? And the thing is, you want to use your metrics whenever you're going to go do anything with your system. You use your metrics to kind of guide your decision making as far as, okay, here's what I'm seeing in my metrics. So if I want to affect, like, say I want to improve my winning percentage, well, there are certain things you do in your trading process that affect the winning percentage. There are other things that might affect your average winner or average loser, your profit to loss ratio. And so you use your metrics to guide where you're going to go attempt to make changes in your system. You make the change and then you go test that change. So that's how you do it in a stepwise process and keep it from getting all over the place. So that you make a change, you know how it impacted the performance.
So that's
Did that answer
from
your question?
the back testing point of view. But then when you start to implement that in real life, then some things can change, can't they? Have you seen that where somebody can have a beautiful system, but then when they go to trade it, they make alterations and they add complexity?
Oh, sure. And that's one where it's just a matter, again, of self-awareness. It's not really even discipline. It's kind of like with your car. You know, are you just going to go like tinker with your car and go playing around with this, that, and the other thing unnecessarily? No, because you want it to run better, not worse. Same thing with your trading. If you're just in there farting around and just randomly doing stuff, not with reasoning and an organized approach, just being self-aware, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to make a mess of things. That's not a wise approach. I want to do things in a very calculated manner. Again, because if stepping your awareness back, if you have a system, you're only placing one trade per day, and a lot of day traders doing a lot more than that, that's 250 trades a year. So if you have a good system, you want to have that good system and be able to execute that good system time and time and time and time and time again. And you want to be executing that good system 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, just like you're doing it now. If it works, you don't want to mess with it. I mean, even a kid knows, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it thing. You know, it's like, yeah, if it's working, don't mess with it. Leave it alone.
But you do have to modify your system. So what's the difference between tinkering with your system and modifying the system?
Modifying it, again, you use your metrics and you use sound reasoning. And you take a measured approach to it. You make a change, you test the change, whether it's back testing and or forward testing. I always recommend both. Because even though it worked yesterday and maybe it worked under similar conditions, you still want to test it today to make sure it's working today.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a firm believer in that as well. We need to have the confidence going on, which means there's a maintenance step as well in people's trading, where you don't just set and forget. You do actually look at the results you're deriving and the ones that actually are not working for you, whether it be a system, whether it be something to do with a time frame. If you've got an area that isn't working for you, then you really do need to assess whether to keep including that in your overall trading. Yeah, sometimes it's the things we take out that can make us more money.
Oh, indeed. Indeed.
Yeah.
I had this one guy I was working with. He had a system. He was really frustrated. I mean, it was like almost to the point of tears. His voice shook the first time we talked together. And he was just, like I said, he was so frustrated. He was about wanted to cry. And he said, this system that I've got used to just crush it. I know it's a good system. And part of it was he had this custom indicator built. And over time, it just got to where he was losing money. It wasn't even that his performance had dropped. It got to where he was losing money. And so we went through it, and it's like, well, okay, let's take a look at what's going on here. We ran the metrics, and so it's like, all right, well, yeah, your profits should be better than they are. What can we do to affect that? And one of the things that he had done over time was added in profit targets instead of letting it run. And he was getting out, or he'd run like 3 contracts, and he'd get out, contract 1, contract 2, and then the third one he would let run. Well, the first 2 were killing us profits. And what we found was when we stripped it all down and said, just let's look at the base, directional indicator, how good is it as far as picking the direction of the market? It was great. So it's like, why are you getting out early then? Let's pull those. And it's like, just let it run. And we made some other changes, but that was like one of the main things. We just stripped it down. Like you were talking about the multi-page systems and that kind of stuff. His system went from 12 pages to 4. And that's including a lot of diagrams. It was actually not a whole lot of text. It's like you could read the whole thing in about a minute. And it was cool because when we stripped it all down, now he's back to just killing it again.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
all the stuff we removed. And again, a good thing for traders to keep in mind, whenever they're wanting to add something to a system, is it really a value add, or am I just trying to capture some additional opportunities? Or am I just kind of wanting to kind of pacify a fear or something? But is it actually helpful? Or am I just introducing an opportunity for error?
Yeah, I can definitely see how that can be of value. And for everybody listening to the show, I'm quite curious because you have got so much knowledge, and I'm trying to distill it down for our listeners so that they can have some specific pieces of advice. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice to our traders?
Well, the first one, or it's got to be in the top 3, is document what you're doing. Absolutely. And do it sincerely and not just BSing it so it sounds good, but like to write down what you do. The second one I would say is really just kind of do a gut check and look at yourself and the training that you received to be a trader. Because a lot of people, their training to be a trader was buying somebody's system, and it's like, here's how you use the system. Good luck. And no, that's not how you be a trader. That's how you work a system. But that doesn't include the whole treating it like a business aspect and all that kind of stuff. So really, just kind of take a serious look. Did you actually receive any kind of reasonable training to be a trader as a professional and a full-time occupation and as a business endeavor? And do you have any business background as well? One of my favorite questions to ask people when they come to me for help. So I'll ask them, have you ever run a business before? Have you ever started and run your own business before? And if they say no, I've always been an employee, then it's like, oh, so you have 2 learning curves to go through. You got to learn how to run your own business and organize yourself and manage things on a day-to-day basis, the planning and everything that goes with that. And you got to learn trading. So you got 2 learning curves to go through. If they've run a business before, they'll have a whole different mindset. They've probably already gone through a lot of the lessons and the humility and that kind of stuff. And so they can treat the trading differently. And now they just need to learn the trading part of it. But so it's that. And really the other thing is use your metrics, run your metrics on your system on a regular basis so that you have a measured view, not just an opinion or how you feel about it or how you want to feel about it or wishful thinking or any of that kind of stuff. You have numbers, and the numbers will give you good feedback. Is it working satisfactorily or not? And if it's not, the numbers can tell you where to go to make things better in an intelligent and organized manner.
Oh, Brian, I love it. I'm married to an engineer, so I've always got such a soft spot for engineers. I love the structured way you think and the routine that you apply to every aspect of your life. And that really, it thrills me because everybody who comes to trading comes from a different background. And there will be things that we need to learn that maybe aren't natural skill sets. So creating that system, creating the checklists, simplifying systems and plans, they are all speaking my language, my friend. Absolutely. Brian McAboy from InsideOutTrading.com. Tell us more about where people can get in touch with you and what type of people usually come to ask you for help.
Um, well, as far as my site, like you said, it's insideouttrading.com. And if you like, I've got a report that you can come get for free. It's insideouttrading.com/enough. And it's kind of, I had fun with this report. It's the title of it is Enough to Be Dangerous. Because for the longest time, I was dealing with this whole thing, in the perspective about, lack of training and all that kind of stuff, and smarter than average. And it's like we don't know some of the critical pieces. We're smart and we're good people and we're resourceful and all this kind of stuff. It's that stuff that we're missing. And so the 4 words to describe most traders is they know enough to be dangerous, and then they get busy and they go get beat up. So, but anyway, if you, like I said, insideouttrading.com/enough, and you can get that free report. And it talks about some of the stuff that we've been talking about today and some of the other things that are part of that. It's like what are some of the other, critical pieces that you're missing, and how it can really help your trading, advance and take some of the headaches out of it for you. What was the other part of your question? You said, where to find me?
The type of people who come to you for training. Give us perhaps a bit of a lowdown on the type of people that would appeal to you as somebody to tutor and mentor.
Generally, no, not everybody. I've worked with people of all different fields. I would say the majority, they'll probably come from either engineering background or professional background, like doctors. I have quite a few doctors who are wanting to retire and trade. We're going to sell their practice and trade for a living. And so, yeah, generally, those are probably the two main groups. Professionals in general, like I said, most traders are smarter than average, so they're going to be in like more white collar jobs, generally speaking. Not everybody, but a lot. It's more commonplace for white collar executives types, C types, than say guys working in a factory, stuff like that. And nothing wrong with anybody. It's just those are the generalities that I found to be true.
It's interesting as well because I guess with your background in engineering, that is who you're attracting. Whereas I've actually also found there are some very artistic people who can get totally involved in the market. I'll close on just this little story. My beautiful friend Anne, who's no longer with us, Antini, she was an artist and she didn't click with trading. She really wanted to trade. It was something that she felt was above her in terms of her intellect. And then when I discovered candles, because I've known her for a very, very long time, when I discovered candles, it was red and green, and all of a sudden it came to life for her. So that that level of artistic creativity captured in a candle totally changed her trading around. And she, I would say, would have been in the phase of perhaps scoring in the lower percentiles for IQ. But when she did die, she left her daughter a blue fortune, which was just magic because she found a way to make that a part of her. And I love that so much. And I do miss her so much. She was a part of my mentor program, and I personally trained her prior to the mentor program. Given that our mentor program's been running for 23 years, it gives you an idea. Yeah, we were definitely close. I always think of Anne when people say, I don't think I'm smart enough to trade, because she said that to me so many times until something just clicked for her and it was all systems go. All of a sudden, she had the motivation and the emotional intelligence to be able to follow her plan step by step. And I love that, because really it's to do with what's inside us and whether we actually want something bigger than ourselves, and that will help us overcome the obstacles. And I'm sure you will have found the same thing, Brian, that if somebody really wants this badly enough, they'll find a way to get it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
fantastic.
speaking of anomalies, one of my favorite traders was a guy who had a coin flip system. He
Uh-huh.
just couldn't deal with watching the charts, waiting for setups, and so he had a random entry system. He would literally lay his paper out on the table that had the different markets, and he would like drop his hand and his finger down. Okay, that's what I'm going to trade, and he would flip a coin. That's what direction I think the market's going to go in. With it, enter the trade, and we got him profitable. He did it all on money management and managing the trade, just with a pure random entry. I'm going in. Here's where I think it's going. I'll just manage the trade, and it was hilarious. He
Isn't
just
that
had no patience
fantastic?
for the setup side of it,
Yeah,
but managing
yeah.
the trade he did fine with.
Yeah, and he found something that fits with his own personality and that could
Oh
drive
yeah.
his trading further, which is fantastic. Look, I hope everybody's having a lovely summer. Come and join me on youtube.com/trading game to see the video if you're listening to the audio. And if you're watching on YouTube, come and join Brian and I at talkingtrading.com.au so that you can hear the audio and you can have it as a regular podcast by subscribing. Brian, you're an absolute gem. I always love time we spend together. I appreciate your mind, and I appreciate every piece of professionalism you bring to this fantastic game of trading. Thank you so much.
Oh, likewise. Pleasure to be here with you as well.